Now, for many years now, Democrats have realized that the only way to turn their radical plans into a reality is to take more power and money from the American people and give it to Washington. They want control over almost every aspect of your life.
We can't drive our SUVs and, eat as much as we want and keep our homes on 72 degrees at all times.
Can't do any of those things, he said back in 2008. And all these years later, we see Obama's heirs carrying on his mission control.
In the same way that we have taxed cigarettes, we're going to have to tax carbon.
We have to take combustion engine vehicles off the road as rapidly as we can.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
Reduce red meat specifically?
Yes, I would.
Now, remember, the left believes that America isn't exceptional. It's systemically racist. And that means we shouldn't be any better off than the rest of the world. So the Greeniacs saw an opening when the global economy due to COVID cratered last year. Because of the lockdowns, closures, and reduced demand, carbon emissions fell by about 2.6 billion metric tons, which was a 7% drop from the year prior. Climate change activists who ignored or dismissed the human suffering caused by these draconian COVID rules were positively giddy. That kids were harmed from the cancellation of in-person learning and athletics was simply not relevant, given the left's larger long-term goal of reducing America's carbon footprint. So they saw COVID as an opportunity to advance the interests of a global climate bureaucracy. Their pet media marveled about the environmental benefits of lockdowns, again, ignoring human suffering.
If there is a silver lining to this crisis, it's visible in the skies above China.
All of this inaction, while causing so many humans problems, has actually proven to be quite good for Mother Earth.
Falling pollution levels brought about by lockdowns may have been shining an impact on sunshine.
Wild animals are now roaming city streets.
How do we make sure these pollution levels don't rebound?
So the longer you were behind closed doors, not commuting to work, not going to church, not traveling to see family, the happier those people were. But having a free country means that individuals are making their own risk assessments according to their own risk profiles. The Greeniacs hate that. They much prefer to order you around, or if that's not possible, to frighten you into abandoning your own common sense. So mindless COVID fear-mongering kept suburban women double-masked on running trails and sent urbanites to Amazon Prime for all their grocery orders. My favorite is when they were frantically wiping down their bananas and their egg cartons worried about COVID.
The virus can live on surfaces, for example, steel and plastic for up to 3 days. We're just going to clean all the virus off here. Don't need to do too much. It's a pretty sensitive virus. For cardboard, it's typically going to be closer to 24 hours.
Of course, none of that was true, right? But he did do a good job of cleaning. But after some fits and starts, we won the COVID debate. Their so-called public health experts were wrong on everything from lockdowns to masks to social distancing. Those measures inflicted enormous economic, educational, and psychological harm to adults and children alike. And Biden's attempt to take credit for this notwithstanding, it was Trump who greenlit Operation Warp Speed. Yet now we see the usual suspects lining up to exploit another hyped crisis. Of course, I'm talking about climate change. And the end goal is the same. They want more of your money and your freedom. And if they have to take extreme measures to accomplish this, oh, they will, unless we're ready for them. So if we apply the lessons learned in our battle against the COVID lockdowns, I'm confident we can stop them and we can win this. Now, if you think the forces propping up Biden aren't thinking about declaring a climate emergency in some form during his first term, you haven't been paying close attention. A report released yesterday by the International Energy Agency gave us a sneak preview of what might be coming. And of course, the lockdowns gave them the perfect roadmap for how to exert control over the population. Don't take my word for it, they admit this. The COVID crisis demonstrated that people can make behavioral changes at significant speed and scale if they understand the changes to be justified. Now, will we be ordered to stay at home because of the climate? Well, perhaps not. The left is rarely that straightforward. But even without government stay-at-home orders, there are a lot of ways for the left to effectively lock you down, like through gasoline shortages, skyrocketing fuel prices, phase-outs of gas-powered cars, just to name a few. In fact, the IEAE's bucket list of climate controls includes carbon taxes, fuel taxes, limiting air travel, reducing speed limits, phasing out gas-powered cars, and many more agenda items. Doesn't that just sound grand? San Francisco, among other cities, is seriously considering implementing congestion pricing with fees as high as $14 for every car entering the city. New York and D.C. are already squeezing cars out by expanding bike and pedestrian lanes. Hawaii, they've already declared a climate emergency there. And the far left is already pressuring Biden to declare one on a national scale. AOC and Bernie Sanders introduced legislation back in February, in fact, to do just that. But we cannot let the politicians or the bureaucrats abuse their authority again. No more never-ending states of emergency, no more executive orders to shutter businesses and schools. If governors or mayors want more authority, then they should ask for the voters to approve that, pass a law the old-fashioned way through the state legislature. Pennsylvania voters offer a blueprint for stopping future abuses of emergency orders by governors who, of course, enjoyed exerting their unchecked authority to shutter schools and businesses. In a rebuke of Democrat Governor Tom Wolf, 54% of voters yesterday supported a ballot question to allow a simple majority of lawmakers to end a disaster declaration at any time. Democrats and so-called public health experts use, remember, half-truths, skewed data, and outright lies to pressure states to make the drastic decision to lock down. Only 7 resisted. Only one state, South Dakota, didn't order any businesses to close during the pandemic. Georgia was the first to reopen. Then Florida and Mississippi and others followed suit. They brushed off the dire warnings and the power-mad COVID-crats. These governors put the overall interests of their residents and the long-term survival of their states ahead of the alarmism of the moment. This is the same approach that we need to take when they throw the climate hyperbole at us. As usual, if we want to see where the Democrats are going, look to Europe. In Milan, they're pushing cars out of there with bike and pedestrian lanes. Fuel taxes are being jacked up all over the UK and Europe. And France is moving to ban all short-haul domestic flights. To stop this nonsense from happening here, we need to aggressively push back at every turn, just like Pennsylvania did yesterday, just like we did with COVID, and just like we're doing with critical race theory in our schools, and we're winning that as well. The only lockdown that should happen again is of the politicians who try to wrest away liberties and hard-earned money on the bogus claim that government can solve every problem, when we know all too often government just makes matters worse. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.